Previously on Break the Cycles. After arriving in Medellin, I was surprised to hear back from Miss Daly. And after some back and forth, I decided to go back and pick her up. On the way back, I visited Stella again and did 2 trips to Zapatoca, one solo, one with her, and then ultimately we returned to Medellin. After our Medellin tour, we left the city and headed to Guatape. Now, Guatape is the name of the town, which has a man-made reservoir as well as a ton of beautiful color houses, but it is also synonymous with the giant rock in the center of the town, which is called El Peñón de Guatape, which is also happened to be the main tourist attraction. Now, the giant rock feature is 200 meters tall, and you can hike up all the way to the top via 740 steps of just switchback walkway. Now, the location is easy access. You basically enter the park, you park your vehicle at the base of the entrance, and then you pay a fee. And there's people watching your motorbike. You got to pay for parking, but it's pretty safe, right? So hiking up this was okay at first. You go up like 2/3 of the way, the steps get really steep. So then I started like losing my breath, and this higher up I go, the more steep it became. And I stopped quite a few times and pretend I was like looking out just so that I can catch my breath and it doesn't look like I'm like super tired. Anyways, finally we made it to the top after about 20 minutes, and it was absolutely breathtaking. You can see everything, like a 360 view around the whole entire area. And I was able to even fly my drone up there and catch this. If you are in and near Medellin, Guatape is a must visit. Absolutely stunning views, fantastic hike up to the top. And we didn't stay too long on the summit, and we did descend down near the bottom to get some lunch. But ultimately, we did find a campsite. And it wasn't too far away from Guatape. We just found a campsite in a local area that's like a designated camping area. Now, at this campsite, there was this guy who was camping there. We got there and he immediately approached us because he saw my bike. Typically, the bikes in Colombia are pretty small. Right? So he sees my bike, he comes over and starts talking. And he harassed us basically the whole time, asking infinite amount of questions because he's trying to get me to give him some money. And Stalin kept trying to get me to pay him off so he would stop talking to us, and I eventually did because he was being really annoying, so I gave him like a few dollars. Wasn't really happy about it because he basically like extorted us. Like if we don't give him some cash, like he was going to do something. It was very slimy. The next morning, there was something going on with my starter again. So whatever I did in Medellin with the starter relay, didn't fix it. Right. So it was good because we were like under this awning, and then there was like a lake overlooking us. So I took my time, took the starter off, looked at it, and it turns out like there was issues with the commutator contact. So I cleaned that up, assembled everything, put it back together. It took a couple hours, but it was very chill. We had bench seating, we were hanging out, and like it wasn't like a big deal. We weren't like in a rush, and we were like covered. So we got everything sorted, and then we got back on our way. Once we were on our way, we hit a huge rainstorm coming south. So we didn't get that far before it got like super cold and super uncomfortable. And we have to stop early because it was just raining so hard. And we stopped at this like random town just off the side of the mountain. This was like we pulled in, and then we saw something on the right hand side. We went in right away and then got a place. And this was a very, very odd hostel. Like the entire hostel was built on this wooden stilts, like on the side of the mountain, right? And like it was just off the cliff. And if that wasn't safe enough, the parking for the motorbike was also on the platform. So I literally wrote down like a whole story onto these planks where it just held on by these like 2x4 studs, like across where the rest of the whole entire hostel was sitting on. Like you're literally just suspended on like a bunch of stilts and these like half-ass built like stuff like on the side of the mountain. It was very sketch. Next morning, woke up, fantastic, didn't fall off the cliff, and the rain finally stopped. So then we went upstairs, And then literally across the street on the other side, not on the cliffside, we see a restaurant. And it just also happened to be a hostel as well. And we just didn't see it when we were coming in when it was raining really hard. But that would probably have been a much better choice to park our bikes and stay instead of the one across the street that we did. Anyways, we had breakfast there, had some hot aqua panela, which I became super addicted to, and it warmed us up. It was still pretty cold in the mountains, so it warmed us up. And then after we were ready, we headed south to Cali. Along the way, there are a lot of very small, neat towns on the mountain passes. The roads are pretty well paved, so the riding was pretty easy because we were just on the highway. And until about 5 p.m., disaster struck. I ran a flat. I immediately noticed that I'm losing control of the steering. The rear end of the bike sagged instantly as the air came out of the tube, and I quickly moved over. Like you have a hard time like steering the bike once one of the tire is completely deflated. So we were right in front of some fancy villa, like right across the street from it when this happened. So there was like no shop, there was nothing nearby. It was in the middle of nowhere, but there was like these two fancy villas on the other side of the road. So I took the pannier off, put the bike on the center stand, removed the rear tire. In about 20 minutes, the tire was off and the inner tube was removed. What I saw got my blood boiling. Remember how I let someone at the shop in Medellin in Africa Moto put on my tires instead of doing it myself? Yes. Well, the genius didn't put any lube on it. And when he put it in the machine like ripped the rubber lip because it was too tight, and it exposed the wire cord. And like it was such a dumb mistake, and he just didn't notice it, put it back on, and obviously over time the wire rubbed against the inner tube, and the inner tube softens up as it heats up, and it popped a hole in the inner tube. So after about 5 minutes of me sitting there cussing at myself for letting somebody else do work on my bike, or let somebody else do the work, I got my shit together. I got some electrical tape that I had inside my bag, and I did the best with the snip to cut the excess wire off, and then put the electrical tape over it as best as I can, and then I put everything back together, and we went on our way. Now, we arrived at the hostess place in Cali, which this is not from like house server. This is like from a WhatsApp group, a motorbike WhatsApp group. So we got into town, we got into place, we put our stuff in there, and they took us to a night ride. Like there was like 7 other bikers around, and we kind of just rode around. There was tons of decoration up because it was near the holiday. It was a very pretty ride in the city. And then the next day, we actually stayed with the same host, and we restocked our supply at the local supermarket. That's like the only trip we did. So we took a very easy morning, went to the supermarket, came back, restocked our supplies, and then this guy was like super weird. I don't, no idea what's going on. He was kind of like, "Oh, I don't really want you to stay here another night." But then that was the arrangement before. We said we needed 2 nights because we needed one day to adjust. But he got so weird about it. But we didn't have anywhere to go by the time he was being weird, so we just kind of stayed the night, and then we left super early the next morning. So we decided to go to a hostel the next day because we didn't want to have any potential awkward host moments. So we arrived at Hostel Aguacate, and Aguacate is a very nice hostel. Like for $10, we had our own private room. It was not a really big room, but you get to lock your room, and so you have privacy, and then you can put your stuff there, and you can lock it. They give you a key, so it's pretty nice. Um, we settled in, and then we call Africa Moto in Medellin, and we try to tell them our issue with the tire, see to honor their work. They asked me to take the tire off, send them the photo, so I show them what happened. So I did. I took everything off. I showed them where the cord is, and they saw the photo, and they basically said not. They didn't say that they're not going to do it, but they basically said that's too bad. It's going to cost us too much money, and we can't fix it. Like this is just going to cost too much. So this is not a shocker because the tire change was like $3. So at that rate, that guy who put the tire on, if he has to cover the cost of the tire, he probably have to work over a week just to cover the cost of the tire. Like it's just it didn't work out. The math didn't work out. So this is a caveat with cheap labor and relatively expensive parts, is that if they damage the part, they're just not. It's not practical for them to warranty the parts cost to fix it. So in contrast, if you're in the States and then you charge like over $100 an hour, you screw up a tire, then okay, you just kind of own up to it and then get another tire, and then one more job an hour later you already broke even. Okay, then you move on. But the economy just doesn't work out with very cheap labor rates, and you still have parts being the same cost. So I thought about buying a new tire, but not only do I have a hard time finding a good tire, the tire is brand new, other than the cut on the inside. So I ended up getting some thicker tape, and I got some sandpaper. I sanded down the exposed wire so nothing is exposed. I did multiple layers of tape and put the tire back on instead of replacing it, because I figure in Peru I'm going to have to replace it again. That's the only other spot where I can actually get the tire that I want. So I'm just going to tough it out for a little longer. The next day, we prepare our things to go to Valledupar to have Christmas with Esteling's parents. But more importantly, we needed to go back to pick her passport up that was sent to her house and only can be sent to her house because we don't know where we're going to be. And so that we can leave Colombia when we come back. And she never had a passport before, so this is the first time she did it. So we have to go back and pick it up. So Hostel Aguacate was super nice to us. They allowed to keep not only our motorbike there, but then they also like kept watch with our stuff, like all the gear that we took it off the bike and then handed to them, and they allow us to, hold the luggage for a few days. So we headed back to Valledupar via flight, which then we had to stop at Santa Marta. There was no direct flight to Valledupar. Um, Probably, maybe there was, but probably was like ridiculously expensive because it was like a super tiny airport there. So Santa Marta is a big airport, so we were able to fly there easily. So instead, we fly to Santa Marta, take a bus, and there are like 7-8 hours of bus ride all the way to Valledupar, and it was a very tiring trek. Now, after a few days, in Valledupar and spent some time there, we flew back to Cali. Same thing, back to Santa Marta, plane right back to Cali. The following day, we joined some of the local festives in the park just north of the hostel. There was a lot of night lights, all kinds of stuff on the top of the park. There was also these like milk crates that you can slide down that we did off of this just like a concrete path, and you just jump on these milk crates. You had to pay money for it just to slide down. This was pretty sketch. I mean, if you lose control or tip over, you could easily get pretty messed up because it's a pretty steep hill and you're just on a concrete crate with like zero protection, like whatever. Anyways, the following day we ended up going to some concert. I don't actually remember where and who the concert was for, but I ended up getting my phone pickpocketed at this concert. I like looked up, I felt it, and then I turned, and someone is gone, and I see the guy dart into the crowd, and I'm just like, anyways, this was a huge deal because most of the stuff I cannot upload to the iCloud because the internet connections were so bad. So most of the stuff was like pending upload to iCloud. So with the phone gone, I lost like a ton of content that I originally had. That really sucks. The only good thing is I had a spare phone, so the show goes on, but I lost a ton of content. So the only thing that I had left is the stuff that I uploaded online already prior to that. So there was some stuff I could salvage, right? And the following day, we headed south to the southern Colombian border. The ride was mostly highway and well paved, with typical usual Colombia traffic. We ended up in a park just on the side of the town where we camped out. And I was also able to fly my drone up and then just did like a 360 around the park. It was kind of cool. The next day we continue south again towards the Ecuador border, and this involves a few mountain passes, and I often hide behind these 18-wheelers, like really close behind, and then they pass, I pass with them, and then they swing out of the way, and then I jump in right behind them. This is like a pretty normal thing there to do, but probably in America, the 18-wheeler truck driver will probably run me off the road from road rage. But there is like a normal thing. Like you see all the bikes like hide behind them and then just like cut through and stuff. Anyways, after a few hours, we finally arrived in Ipiales. Now, Ipiales is a Catholic church built in the 1900s, and this is a very popular photo. This is a suspended bridge over the Guitarra River, and this is an iconic pilgrimage for a lot of Catholics and very unique neo-Gothic like architecture. Now, this is a must see. I mean, this is an absolute architectural beauty, spanning the bridge like as a bridge spanning both sides of the river, and then just there's like a church there. Like it was absolutely beautiful. Now, there was actually quite a bit of walking to the bridge. Like you had to park pretty far away to walk there. Like they block you off and you had to walk very far away to get there. And then you have to cross the bridge and then walk up a bunch of steps. There's a bunch of other places to see, but there was like tons and tons of walking. I decided not to take my gear off, and that was like a huge mistake. Because I thought it was going to be there, we'll see it and then walk back out, but it was tons of walking. Anyways, after spending a bit of time in Ipiales, we decided to leave. And then we saw these alpacas right right at the entrance area. So we pay like $1 to take photo with all these alpacas at the entrance. It was very silly, and we would never do it again because later on in Peru we see like millions of these just like wandering around in the wild. Like this was like, oh my god, never seen alpaca before. But then they forgot the fact that we were actually heading all the way to Peru. Either way, after the photo op, we crossed over to Ecuador, and the border crossing was orderly and easy compared to the Central America. The border crossing in South America feels like a developed and civilized process. I don't even remember this crossing. That is how uneventful this was. Now, after we made our way into Ecuador, we found a wilderness camping spot. It was a nice site. No one was around. We had the place all to ourselves. We had trouble finding fresh water sources though, so I ended up using my fresh water filter for the very first time. And I found some like dirty water stream and then purify the water and then boil it, and we were okay. Next time, we visited Cotopaxi and the swing at the end of the world in Ecuador.